Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video is the Rwanda bill finally passed into law, something that should never have happened. I'm going to discuss the major implications as well as what's going to happen now, because many of the things which could happen with this bill over the next few months, what is certainly not going to happen is what Sunak says will happen. So first of all, why is the bill passed? The entire premise of the bill is to allow the government to break both domestic and international law without the courts being able to stop them. Very dangerous path which other countries have walked in the past to their detriment. The Tories keep talking about the sovereignty of Parliament. We must defend the sovereignty of Parliament. This has got nothing to do with the sovereignty of Parliament. Parliament has determined that we should be subject to the UN Refugee Convention, the European Convention on Human Rights, and the Human Rights Act. If Parliament chose to withdraw us from all of these obligations, then there is nothing any court could do to interfere with the Tories' plans, because courts only decide on matters to which the sovereign Parliament has determined we should be bound by. So if this bill allows any of these courts to be bypassed, it means we are bypassing the law as determined by our Parliament. That this bill was passed is nothing less than a disgrace. And I mean, literally, it will disgrace us. Future UK governments will now struggle to be of much use in persuading other countries of the benefits of the rule of law when we are about to cast them into the bin. So why did it happen? Ultimately, Sunak locked Parliament into a never-ending cycle of voting until either the bill passed or the Lords killed it. The Lords, as an unelected body, were not prepared to be seen as killing a bill which the elected chamber was consistently voting in favour of. And so it was just a case of how long could an upper chamber comprising of people in their 70s, 80s and 90s keep going? Not all through the night. So the bill ended up being passed in the early hours of this morning. The only concession was the government have agreed not to send Afghan refugees who helped the British Army in Afghanistan. In other words, veterans of the British Army. They will still send ordinary Afghans fleeing what the government accepts is a dangerous regime. So another lie of the programme exposed, even by the government's own definition. Afghan asylum seekers should not be classed as illegal immigrants because we formally accept many have a right to asylum, but there are no safe routes. So they still have to arrive by unconventional means like small boat. In terms of what happens now, so let's look at what Sunak says will happen and then poke at any holes. So Sunak has now announced the legal process. They say they've already identified a list of, I think it's 350 asylum seekers. They say that these will be, I think they said they're going to detain these when the bill passes into law at the end of the week, because some think that now thousands of asylum seekers who think they will be at particular risk of being identified will disappear in order to avoid being deported to Rwanda, which puts vulnerable people at greater risk of sex trafficking and other forms of slavery. Some people use the term modern slavery. I'm not sure I like that. Slavery is slavery, isn't it? So before the government even uses this bill, we will have worked to allow evil people to take advantage of those in need. It will take a long time and a sustained period of well-meaning governments before we are going to wipe the shame of this from our nation. So what is the process as stated by the government? Well, as I've already said, they claim they already have the asylum seekers identified. So straight away, the deterrent effect is zero. They're saying, oh, this will deter people from coming over here now. It's like, so there's lots of arguments against that, not the least of which is that the Home Office itself says there's no evidence there's a deterrent effect. But here's the thing. The asylum seekers have already been identified, right? So they've already been. So anyone coming across, say, today, and unfortunately there were deaths of people trying to come across today, but anyone coming across today can't be sent to Rwanda because by definition they're not on the list. And they will know if they know anything about it at all, and why would they? Who's going to tell them? But if they do know anything about it at all, they'll know that the next government that comes in is going to scrap it. Zero risk of anyone coming across in a small boat going to Rwanda. It's not just that it's a tiny risk, it's a zero risk. So how does the deterrent work? But anyway, never mind that. The government claim they're going to send out deportation letters, right? And there'll be a process of appeal. You've got 8 days to appeal. I assume all of this is working days. The Home Office will then respond within a matter of several days, they say. So, I mean, that could be like a week. The victim is then allowed to lodge a final appeal with an upper tribunal court within 7 days. And then that process can take up to 23 days. So, again, if those are all working days, which surely they are, you add all that up, that comes to about 11 weeks, right? Which I guess is where Sunak's figure for sending flights within between 10 and 12 weeks comes from. Sunak says he's set aside courts and judges in order to prioritise the hearing of these cases so they don't get delayed. Now, as many lawyers have pointed out, that means that our already backlogged court system is now going to face even greater bottlenecks. So if you're waiting for court cases to come, for example, you're a victim and you're pressing charges, that's now going to take even longer, all for the sake of this expensive, cruel and utterly ineffectual plan. Although if this is to be the last act of the Tories, it's fitting, I suppose. Expensive, cruel and ineffectual has been what they've been since 2010. Obviously, I can't possibly comment on the likelihood of how many appeals will be successful. The government think they've identified asylum seekers with the weakest cases against being sent to Rwanda. We're told in reports that Home Office officials don't believe they can send many asylum seekers to Rwanda at all, but they do think they can send some. In terms of election timing, I did post a video yesterday pondering whether Sunak was gearing up for a summer election here. So the thinking runs along two lines. First, I've seen some people suggesting Sunak wants this steady stream of flights, a steady rhythm he described it as, going to Rwanda over the summer and then have the election in autumn, right? To show that he's achieved it, that he's done it. Now, I don't rule out the logic completely, but I have two serious doubts about that. The first, we are told that the government won't be able to send a steady stream of flights over the summer. Now, I am just basing that on reports. Maybe they've got a plan to do that. I don't know. But the second and more serious issue is that we know there is no major deterrent effect here. So even if the flights take off as Sunak is suggesting, if they don't work to massively reduce channel crossing numbers, they just expose themselves. And as the government have admitted they have no evidence of the deterrent effect of this plan, because you could argue maybe Sunak believes in the deterrent, right? Or maybe cleverly believes in the deterrent. But given that the Home Office have said, yeah, there's no evidence of the deterrent effect, I'm not sure that Sunak really does believe that his plan will reduce boat crossings. And if he actually does have flights taking place all over summer, and there are still record numbers of boat crossings, Sunak is in a way worse position than if Parliament never passed his rotten bill. So yeah, I have very serious doubts about this concept of flights over summer then election in autumn. I don't see how that works, unless I'm missing something. The second, which I discussed yesterday, is that Sunak holds the election right after the first flight takes off. That he gets a flight in the air, maybe he gets two, the election shortly afterwards. That way he proves he can get asylum seekers to Rwanda, but the rest of his claims remain untested. Because it could be argued, because you may say, well, he says the deterrent effect will take place days later. But if we're already into an election campaign, maybe Purdah stops the media from reporting the channel crossing numbers at that point. Now, there are still problems with this idea as well in terms of the timing, because it's a bit weird. It's like, so when do you call the election? He can't wait until the flight's actually in the air to call the election, because then the election would have to be late August or early September, which, two problems. First of all, it means over summer when you want your activists out and about door knocking, they're on holiday. And secondly, it still means a full summer of like nothing really happening and the boat numbers still carrying on. So really, you'd want to have already called the election in the knowledge that the flight will take off. And so the election takes place end of July. That's my thinking. There are difficulties with that. I can certainly think of like problems with that line of thinking. I just think it makes more sense than the first idea of not even having the election until autumn, allowing months of either flights with no effect on the channel crossing numbers or one or two flights and like nothing, and the channel crossing numbers still going up. Again, unless I'm missing something. Another factor to consider is the physical means of flying the asylum seekers. Sunak claims he's got a carrier arranged. He's got the contract's been given out. He's got someone sorted. But it has been pointed out by lawyers that any commercial operator not only faces potential boycott, but could be prosecuted themselves by international courts. A point I've consistently made myself is that although government ministers will face no legal jeopardy for breaking the law like this, private citizens and ordinary businesses who get involved can. In fact, we already know that some Home Office officials have expressed concern about applying certain aspects of the Rwanda plan for fear of being prosecuted, because they're not exempt. They don't get away with. They don't have immunity to prosecution, particularly in international courts. Other governments might also revoke the license of this operator within their territories if the public backlash in other countries is great enough. It's certainly interesting that Sunak claims a contract has been awarded but won't say to whom. There was a crossbench peer in the Lords debate last night who commented on this and suggested Sunak might be lying. Shocking, I know. And I suppose the final factor would be the strength of public opposition. Inevitably, some people will try to stop these illegal deportations. Will the government have a security operation strong enough to overcome the protests? Even though this bill has now passed and will pass into law this week, we expect, there is still a lot of uncertainty. But I think there are two things which I am confident about. First, the Tories want to make the general election essentially about this thing, and they think they're putting themselves in a strong position to do so. Labour don't want the election to be about a single issue at all, this or anything else. But I think Labour will still think they're going to have the best of this because they don't expect the Channel crossing numbers to go down as a result of this. Second, and most importantly, the Tories cannot afford a long delay between flights taking off and the election. These flights will not stop the boats, as Sunak is claiming, and he's claiming that the impact will be seen within days. He said that now, this week. He expects the impact to be noticed within days of the flights taking off. He's given himself no wriggle room for a long period for this to take effect. I just don't see Sunak wanting the election months after his first flight to Rwanda takes off. Why expose the fact that your plan hasn't actually worked? Unless, of course, he really is a secret Labour agent, but I suspect not. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.